Okay, a quick video on our last two statements that can be used inside of loops. They're the break and continue statements. Right? Break is going to break the flow of code, break out of the loop. Continue will let you skip over some statements within the loop. Right? So they interrupt the normal flow of control of a program. Right? Usually we've seen whenever we're inside a loop and a test condition is true, we just keep executing the same statements in order in the loop. But a continue statement is going to be used to skip statements inside it. When we say continue, we'll see the flow of operations go back to the start of the loop, basically the test condition. And a break statement will actually be used to terminate the loop execution. So we'll break out of the loop. So the one way we saw to break out of the loop before was the test condition had to become false, right, before we'd break out of the loop. Now a break statement will do that for us. It doesn't require using checking the test condition. Right. So here's a flow chart showing our loop. There's some sort of conditional code, right? We evaluate that conditional code if it's true. Here we're performing the conditional code. So we're already in the loop performing some sort of conditional code. We check the test condition, right? And we're looping through. So this is saying we're in the loop, test condition is true, we keep looping through. This works for a while or for a loop. But somewhere within this conditional code, right, there is another test checking to see if some condition is true. When that condition is true, we then break out of the loop. I think it's just easier to see from an example how we terminate out of the loop. Right, so here's an example where we're trying to avoid division by zero. Right? Sort of a contrived example just to show how to use a break statement. But we have this variable dividend. We set it equal to 10. We're going to set I equal to 5, I greater than or equal to minus 5. We're going to be subtracting 1 from I. The way this is going to work is we know when we come into a for loop, we execute this code once and only once. So we'll declare I here with scope local to the for loop. It only exists within the for loop. We initialize it to 5. Then we perform the test condition. So if I is greater than or equal to minus 5, this is true when I is 5. We come down here, first statement inside the body of the loop is if I is equal to 0, we want to break out. Y is not equal to 0, so this test condition is false. This is that conditional code that we saw in the flow chart. So we come down and we go ahead and we just print out. So we take the value of dividend, which is 10, right? 10 divided by 5 should give us a value of 2. And you can see this is going to print out here from all the way from I equals 5 to I equals 1, right? So when we finish, we get to the end of the body of the loop. I was 5 the first time. We come back up and we then execute this statement. So we subtract 1 from I becomes 4. We then perform the test condition. Is 4 greater than or equal to minus 5? Well, yes, it is. We execute the next line of code within the body of the loop. Is I equal to 0? That's false, so we don't execute the break. We come down and we print out the value of 10 divided by 4. Remember, this is integer division, so we're still getting a value of 2 in this case. We get to the end of the loop, we come back up here, execute this statement, which says to subtract 1 from I was 4, we subtract 1, it becomes 3. We then check the test condition. Is 3 greater than or equal to minus 5? This is true. I said, you can see this keeps going until we get to the point where I becomes 0. Is 0 greater than or equal to minus 5? Well, yes, it is. So now we come in here to the code and we say, well, if I is equal to 0, break out of the loop, which is why as soon as this break condition is encountered, the statement executes, we will not print out dividend, right, I of 0. That's why you don't see this here in the output. When we break, we come completely out of the loop. We go to this line of code following it, which is return 0. Like I said, this is sort of a trivial contrived example because you're probably looking at this going, well, if I just want to divide 10 by 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, I could just change my test condition in the loop. And that's true, right? But you have to remember is that sometimes you'll be dealing with numbers that you'll be dealing with variables rather than some of these hard-coded numbers. I might set I equal to some other variable, say Z, right? And we would not know. It would be possible that we could execute our loop so many times without Z ever becoming 0. So that's still a pretty abstract example. You'll know an example when you come across it, because you'll be writing your loop and say, oh, in this case, I need to break out of my loop. How do I do that? I use a break statement. Or let's actually run the code over here. Let me set this equal to 10. I'd set it equal to 5. So this is our same code here. No build errors. What did I? No. Oh, I forgot one of those. Oh, I said I equal to 1 here, so this would come faster. Right, 10 divided by 1 is equal to 10. Right, this was true the first time that 1 was greater than or equal to -5. Right, we did I was not equal to 0, so we printed this out. We come back up when I was 1, we subtract 1 from 1, we get 0. 0 is greater than or equal to -5. We get to this statement, which became true, which was why we only saw that one line of output here. So if I go back and set this equal to 5, like we did in the slide example, right, we can see that we're going to print out 10 divided by 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right. Now, let's look at this same example, but with a continue statement. So the important thing about break is, remember, a break statement breaks completely out of the loop. It doesn't go execute the test condition. It just leaves immediately. Right. So as soon as this is encountered, this is saying, let's break out of here. Let's get out of this loop. Don't execute any other code associated with that loop. Oh. So the continue statement, right? Oh, the break statement can be used in a switch statement, right? If you've already encountered the switch structure with switch and cases, we use a break statement in that. The continue statement can only be used in an iteration statement. So in other words, when you're in a loop, right? Continue is not used anywhere else. It's going to terminate the execution of the loop body for that one particular iteration. Right. It will go back and evaluate the loop expression to see whether or not another iteration of the loop should be performed. So should we keep looping through? And if it's a for loop, it's also going to execute those increment statements that we have. Right. So this is our same example that we had before with a for loop. Right. Dividends 10, I is equal to 5. Everything's the same. We've got if I is equal to 0, but instead of break, we have continue. So remember, before, break ended the loop execution. What continue says is when I becomes equal to 0, the continue statement says, okay, don't go execute any other statements in the body of the loop. So it will not execute this. What it will do, continue will say, okay, well, this is a for loop. I need to go up here and execute any of these increment statements. So when I is 0, we're going to subtract 1 from it. We're going to get -1. Then I'll evaluate this test condition. Is -1 greater than or equal to -5? That'll be true. We'll come then into the statements in the body of the loop. If I is equal to 0, well, it's not. So only one time will this be true. And when it's true, we don't execute this code below it. So continue then doesn't break out of our loop. Continue basically has a skip over any code that's within the loop, but after the continue statement, right? And so you can see the program output here, but let's go back to our program here and let's change this from break to continue, which is the same as that slide example. We're going to run it. We're going to pop. Output comes out. So we get 10 divided by, so I is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then we go to -1. So notice we don't execute this code where we print up this information when I is equal to 0. So in that way, we've avoided a divide by 0 because we do the division there. So in this case, continue then allowed us to execute everything else in the loop. It allowed us to get a little bit more information out of our program, right? Except for the 0 value. And typically, maybe what you might want to do there is, notice we just said continue, but you might want to put out some sort of error message or something like, oops, I0 do not divide by 0. Some sort of message. It all depends on your application, right? Whether or not you want to let somebody know if that was encountered. Like I said, you could have multiple statements there before you hit continue if you had some actions that you wanted to perform. Right, and then that's it for the continue statement. So the difference, right? Break breaks completely out of the loop. Continue basically says, okay, skip over anything below and just continue on with loop execution. If you're in a for loop, go ahead and execute the increment, decrement statements, these actions here, and then perform the test. Right. All right, that's it for break and continue. Like I said, they're not used very often. But every once in a while, you'll find yourself unable to write code in any other manner, and you'll be forced to use one of those.